to usher in Dr. Willy Mutunga, Chief Justice Emeritus. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Before we even get into Kenya's constitutional and political journey and the legalese around it, I want you to start us off with the insights of your early life. How was it like growing up in Kitui in those days, during the pre-independence Kenya?
It's an interesting question because growing up as a kid, there were 4 forces that I remember. There is the community, there is religion, there is colonialism, and also resistance, because it's during the time I'm in primary school that the Mau Mau War is ongoing. So you grow up in my village was during that time was a great village. There were 5 rich people. They took care of the village, so that nobody slept hungry. The grazing was communal. The watering places were, communal. And as kids, you could get into any sugar plantation and cut a cane to eat, or uproot a cassava and eat it, mangoes. So there was a kind of socialism, in that community, where you felt you are a child of everybody. Of everybody. Okay?
And you are the village.
Yes, and you are disciplined by everybody if you disobeyed. So I remember that a community, where kids were treated nicely and fed, and it was a community within colonialism that was at peace with itself. Yeah. And then you then go into the issue of religion, whereas a child, the confusion starts. You see your parents who are traditional, who are following, the kind of traditional religion, pour the libations at night. And then there is a church that is built, in the village, and there are few converts. And religion is also tied to the primary schools that we go to, because it was a given. Once you go to school, the teachers will want you to be a Christian, and so forth. But colonialism, we knew as children that the British, were in power. We didn't get to see a lot of white people in Kitui town because of the segregation.
Okay.
The town was segregated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I took some time to look at a book that has been authored by Elizabeth Mazrui.
Yes.
She talks about your life's journey, and she depicts you as somebody who sort of got a sense of fairness and justice early in your life. So share with us some specific events that you believe today, when you look back in retrospect, influenced your worldview today.
Yeah, I think basically the community is key. That is the crucible, of my, sense of justice. The fact that colonial education was very, very brutal, and the colonialism itself, was felt even in the village, because you had chiefs, you had the askaris in the villages, and they were also very, very brutal. The teachers themselves were also very brutal. So as a child, you grow hating the oppressors and the people who are not treating you well, and you glorify the people who treat you well. I think for a child that's a very easy choice to make.
And those people who would include your grandmother,
yes,
who at some point singled you out of a sibling, your other 8 siblings, and said that you will one day be a great person. So I want to ask you, why you? And from your grandmother?
Well, she said that this was a prophecy. She told me that there was a famine in Kitui, and my grandmother had 9 children, and she lost 6 of them. So it's only my mother and my aunt and my uncle who survived. Anyway, she was 2 of her kids had died, and my mother was crying. And she just got fed up. There was no food, so she threw my mother into, a bush. And somebody passed there and said, you shouldn't do that, because that child will be the mother of a governor. That's what they said.
That's what they said.
Yeah, and I told my mother, my grandmother, it's not going to happen. Governors were white. Okay, I didn't look into the issue of the office, and I didn't think much of it
about it at that point
until I became president of the Law Society of Kenya. I said, hey.
And you looked back.
I looked back. I said, wow, about this prophecy.
Wow.
Then I became president of the
Supreme Court.
Supreme Court.
Wow.
And I started thinking, maybe this thing about governor is something bigger. And I said, oh my God, I wish I was 35. That's what I'll go for.
Wow. When I got a chance to look at your O-level exam records, and that was the old education system.
Yeah.
You were obviously, without any shadow of doubt, a bright spark by Kenyan standards. And you delivered straight A's in all your subjects. And congratulations. So what was your drive in education? What lied behind,
I think, I'm in school, just when the Lancaster conferences are happening. I'm in primary school. I'm in standard 8 when Kenyatta is released in 61. Okay? I go to Kitui Secondary School in 62. That's the period of decolonization. And education becomes, a very, very, very important discussion among the community, among the students themselves, among everybody, because everybody is saying the British are leaving, there will be jobs. If you do well, you obviously become somebody. You become somebody, yeah. So that was the basis of it.
Okay.
And there are teachers who never tire of actually telling us this and putting extra time. Yeah.
Okay. If in the African context, there were, social and cultural factors behind marriages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you, a baptized Protestant, you rejected your parents' push to have you marry when you were young. But later, and this is what becomes interesting for me, you turned away from the church because of the hostility towards the traditional animistic practices. So what do you tell those people who see this as two opposed philosophies?
I normally refer people to the Constitution itself, which article that's true, I think it is, where your belief and your opinion is your right. Okay? That's why in this country you can be a devil worshipper, you can be an atheist, you can belong to all religions that you want. That's basically the constitutional value that we have. And I think it's basically based, in my view, on Desmond Tutu's philosophy and theology, which is captured in a little book called God is Not a Christian, where he argues that God is a creator, and he creates all of us. So even if atheists say that they don't believe in God, but they are created by God, that's how he argues. Even if people say we fed up with gay people are also God's, creations. And he goes on to basically say that no religion owns God. No particular religion owns God.
It's the other way around.
Yeah, and for me, when I keep on saying that I'm a man of all faiths, it's because that's the philosophy. I've been to temples. I've been I'm a practicing Muslim.
Yeah.
I have no problem going to the Roman Catholic Church or the Protestant and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well. Very well. Let's now move into your tenure as a Chief Justice. And I'm looking at the 2010 Constitution, which was broadly billed as very, very progressive.
Yeah, it is.
What would you highlight as some of the gains that you made during your tenure as Chief Justice?
That's a tough call, because as you always say, the jury is out there basically to say what exactly we did. But I need to say that what was done in the judiciary was the collective effort of a lot of people, a lot of experts in various areas. We also got money from Kibaki, moved our budget from 3 billion to 17 billion. So we were able to do a lot of stuff. Technology became the enabler for the administration of justice. Courts were built, salaries were improved. And in terms of developing the jurisprudence, we were faithful to the
overall objective.
To the overall objective.
I know it's difficult sometimes to speak about achievements, but it cannot be that difficult to highlight, because everywhere where there are milestones, it's balanced off by a deficit. What are the areas where you felt you fell short of what you had set very clearly as your goals?
Well, we had what we called the Judiciary Transformation Framework, 2012 to 2016. And we were very, very, very clear. We wanted, to develop jurisprudence. We wanted to build courts. We wanted technology, improved. And we also, there was a pillar about leadership, and professionalism, which we took to the Judicial Training Institute, so that, even judges, clerks, everybody could be trained in what they did. And one of the things I liked before I left the Supreme Court is to see my colleagues who are clerks turning up to be sworn in as, or to be admitted to the role of advocates, because of the trainings and people being allowed to self-educate themselves.
So if you look back, is there anything you'd point out and say, if I had time, I would have sort of brought this to closure?
No, in public service you don't close anything.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
You basically leave it to the next person.
Okay, fair enough.
And what CJ Maraga did was to came in with his philosophy, which was very positive, of sustaining judicial transformation, which meant that you build on what we had achieved, rescue the weaknesses, and then move into other directions. Okay,
fair enough. And now that you've talked about CJ Maraga, we remember the historic Raila presidential petition, which you threw out. It was seen
we didn't throw it
many.
Out, we dismissed.
We dismissed it. It was seen by many, by the way, as the greatest test of your career. You mentioned Maraga, and I want you to describe what you think about his ruling. He annulled the 2017 election. What was going through your mind when you saw that decision?
Oh, when I saw it, the first thing I thought was, oh my God, I wish the scrutiny that the Supreme Court in 2013 asked for was completed, but it wasn't. We asked for scrutiny suo motu, which is on our own motion, in 2013, although a lot of people don't talk about it, where we wanted the 33,400 polling stations, scrutinized, so that all of them, so that you could get a good picture of of whether there were malpractices and so forth. But it wasn't finished. And we couldn't use that evidence. But the other thing I realized was that because of the Judicial Training Institute and what was called the Judicial Elections Committee that Judge Maraga chaired and others, the electoral jurisprudence had become very clear by 2017, and they could rescue whatever mistakes we made. That's how you develop the law, that you clarify the ambiguities.
Yeah.
But above all, the courage to decide
this or that way.
Yes. There's a courage, and in the case of Kenya, that courage should not be underestimated, because whatever you decide, you will be attacked, you will be vilified and glorified in equal measure. So it takes a lot of courage, and this time the judges differed, which was okay, 4-2, which is what is also important. But yeah, I said yes, the judiciary is, particularly the Supreme Court, is sending a message to the barons and the factions that it can decide against either faction, because in my view they decided against Jubilee, and in the rerun they actually indirectly decided against NASA.
Against NASA.
Yeah, although NASA didn't participate, but it was a great message for any Supreme Court to basically tell the factions among the politicians that you don't intimidate us. We can nullify an election, and
that you're fiercely independent.
Yes, it's always a good good message. But the problem with election petitions is that they will destroy courts, because you have a country that is divided.
How do you mean?
I mean that, take for example the 2013 petition that we decided.
Yeah.
Among Kenyans, they think that I'm the one who decided it, not the 6 of us. And as it turned out, the Kamba community was in CORD, and so the CORD faction have never forgiven me for it. But the other side, when I saw in President Uhuru Kenyatta on 9th of April 2013,
you were celebrated.
I was given an ovation. It's deafening, ovation. And I asked myself, if I was in Nyanza or Machakos or Gitria, I would probably have been stoned. That's division, Tom.
That's division right there.
Makes it very difficult even for whatever you call Solomonic wisdom.
Yeah.
Even whatever you decide, there are millions who are going to curse you.
Yeah, that's true.
And millions who are going to celebrate you.
Who are going to celebrate you.
Yeah.
So, beyond even the news sound bites, the headlines that, one side won, the other lost, do you think that the public could be missing out on understanding what the difficult questions are if they don't read the Supreme Court rulings, just to appreciate and engage with arguments from both sides?
Yeah, it's very difficult for ordinary people, to do it. But it was great that these presidential petitions are televised. It's also taught us a lesson, particularly when we gave the decision in 2013 that we could have followed the South African method, where you have a dialogue with the people, because you tell them why you are deciding in a particular way. Okay, but we debated it, and I think a lot of my colleagues thought that there might be a difference between that discussion and the reasons that we give 3 weeks later. But I think it's a good practice when you are televised. to basically have that dialogue with the people and say, in simple terms, in fact, we used to do what are called media briefs, because a lot of journalists are not lawyers, so you simplify that for them, and so we can, that discussion can take place, and it's better so that people, at least those who want to listen, they will listen. But in this country, because of politics of division, do you think the losing candidate and the followers will listen? 2017 gives you an idea of how the politicians dealt with the judiciary, the abuses and the threats
that were going around.
Yeah, so until this country changes and becomes a nation, in the vision of the Constitution, where we value our diversity, and we start now looking at politics of issues and not politics of division.
BBI is live. And regardless of which direction it goes, what do you see as the significance of that case going forward?
Well, it's with the Court of Appeal. I'm a former CJ. I don't want to second guess what I might say. My views on BBI might be misread. Okay, and I will be putting my colleagues in the Court of Appeal in a very, very embarrassing situation if a former CJ will sit and say this decision was great or this decision wasn't great and so forth. So we just have to wait
and see
and wait again, because whatever the decision, I'm sure it will end up in the Supreme Court.
In the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just take you back. You behind the scenes. You sort of worked together with opposition leaders, Mwai Kibaki, Charity Kalukingilu, there was Michael Mamalwa, to form the National Alliance for Change that won the 2002 elections. How easy was it, because you were doing the back-end logistics, to cobble together this coalition? Because remember, we are also on coalition making mode now.
It's very difficult, because you are dealing with people who are not sincere. Okay, let me give you the example of that coalition, Kibaki, Wamalwa, and Ngilu. Yeah, they all knew that Kibaki will be their flag bearer, but that issue was not discussed. I was not even allowed to discuss it. So, they spend a lot of time, drinking tea and doing nothing. And when Kibaki was asked, he said, drinking tea is politics. and he was right. It's politics.
It's politics.
But that one, that's where I noticed Kibaki's genius. Because he knew if he was prematurely given the flag bearer's position, he would obviously face a lot of attacks. So it stayed open, and we did a lot of papers for them as government in waiting. But you remember the moment Kasarani happened, and Raila had to bring the Kano orphans, to Kibaki Tosha. That's when Kibaki became the flag bearer. As they came from Kasarani, there was no other alternative but to basically endorse him. So that's great politics that I learned there, because Kibaki attended all meetings, but that issue was never raised.
It never came up.
No. And
it never came up.
And he didn't allow it. But I also learned a lot about politicians and their body language. Kibaki never talked much.
As people.
During those meetings, he never talked much. But if you looked at his body language, you could see whether he was very angry with that particular question and so forth.
Okay.
And it's very, very, very difficult, because the politics of division don't attract consensus.
They repel.
They repel.
Yeah. So what makes coalitions experience turbulence? Midway, as was the case with NAC, and today we are seeing Jubilee.
Yeah.
Right in the middle.
It's again a contestation for political power, and also consensus or pacts that have been torn up.
Yeah.
Which
becomes difficult to reconcile.
Which is the case in both cases. If you look at Jubilee, I guess Deputy President Dr. Ruto expected to be endorsed, and supported by Uhuru.
Yeah.
You remember the Kibaki and the Raila, the same issue.
Yeah.
And this is because one thing that Kenyans don't realize is that the people we elect are not the ones who rule. There are forces behind them.
Tell me more about that.
Well, when you hear about cartels, when you hear about international community, which is the euphemism for foreign interests, there are these forces that enslave, elected officials. And sometimes in some countries like Uganda, it could be the military that can tell you can't leave. I'm sure that's what happens to Museveni. He's basically told, no, you stay, because of these other interests. Okay. So it's easy when you asked about building alliances and trust. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult because they go back after you have agreed on something, and then they
renege.
They renege, and then the whole thing becomes conflictual. And in the Kenyan situation, what surprises me is that the elite hasn't become conscious of their interests, so that they could, share this power without all these, pull
and push.
Yeah, and threats, so that whenever we have elections like now, everybody is afraid.
Everybody is afraid. And in fact, you're talking about the election. Is the August 10th, 2022 election date cast on stone?
No, I don't think it is. You have to look at Article 58. There could be issues of declaration of emergency and so forth, which, if you look at that article, you will see with Article 132, I think you'll see what the scenarios are. Parliament is involved, the Supreme Court is involved in these issues of emergency that can come out of war, serious pandemics and other issues.
So it can shift.
It can shift
on the dynamics.
Yes. Okay. But in this country, in terms of politics, shifting can spark off a lot of instability.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You left early before your term ended. If the clock were to be turned back, what would you do differently?
Nothing. Nothing really. Because when you are in what I call collective leadership, and in the judiciary there was that, and there still is. People forget that in the judiciary you have associations like the Kenyan Judges and Magistrates Association, you have Kenya Women Judges Association, you have the Kenya Staff Association, there's something called the JELAC, which is the Judiciary Leadership Advisory Council, there's the JTI, where we all get trained. There's a lot of value in making the institution unified and speaking with one voice.
Okay.
And that kind of leadership is good because you don't feel like you are being pushed to take an individual decision, because you consult, and the decision that comes out is an institutional decision.
And the heavy stakeholder engagement.
Yes.
Okay, so as we come to the end of this show, you've passed the 7th floor. You're now 75 years?
Yeah, I'm living on borrowed time. If we trust what the Bible says.
Yeah. Yes. And some doctor told me that the threshold dropped to 50. So if you've done 75, then that's pretty good. I've done
74.
You've done 74.
Yeah.
And you've been there, and you've done it all. You've seen it all. What would you wish to see Kenya become in your sunset years?
That's a brilliant question, because I thought you were going to ask me what would you like, what would you wish Kenya remembered you for? Well, wherever I will be, I've given you that history, of Kenya, which still continues. The history of resistance, because Kenyans don't like dictatorships, and when you trace it, you realize that there was always, whether it's against the colonialists, there was also resistance to their domination and so forth, and I think it continues, which is a good thing. But in my life, I've always wished for a Kenya that is free, a Kenya that is just, equitable, egalitarian, ecologically safe, is gender just, is non-ethnic, is non-racial, and is prosperous. Okay, that has always been my vision of Kenya, and basically also a Kenya that values its diversity. Okay, and we it's not a Kenya based on divisions and so forth, which causes strife and so forth, and that's basically what my vision is.
Do you see it happening in your lifetime?
No.
Why no?
It's, well, I don't know my lifetime, so I don't know when it is that I'm going to leave this.
But are we likely to turn the bend soon?
The history of Kenya shows that. When you look at the history of resistance, it's always, whether it's the second liberation, whether it's the Mau Mau itself, whether it's Mekitilili, whether it's Wayaki, whether it's Koitalel, all those people, which historians don't want to capture and which the media doesn't also, glorify. It's when you have oppression, you have resistance. And in the struggle between oppression and resistance, that's when there's progress. Okay. Because those who are in power sometimes make concessions, like the 2010 Constitution has a lot of those concessions. But the implementation now is the one that has become a problem, okay? Has become another struggle. I personally have made it very clear publicly that the crisis of this nation is a crisis of political leadership.
Okay.
And if you get an alternative political leadership that completely leads in the opposite direction of what our barons are doing, it will be different.
It will be different.
Yeah, but because these alliances, don't forget, alliances that we keep on mentioning are about 5 communities. The big 5, not the animals, but the communities.
The communities.
And you know them, right?
Yeah.
So the alliances, whether it's One Kenya, whether it's Tanga, whether it's Jubilee, whether it's BBI, all those ones, when you look at it, it's the 5 communities that control over 70% of the vote. So even in 2002, Kibaki's victory was not an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, because of those particular alliances. And what we need to do is look at the Constitution, Article 91, which says you cannot organize politics on the basis of division.
Yeah.
And we also remember there are other communities, not just the 5.
Yeah.
Okay? Some that are marginalized. And so it's the age of neopolitics. And for me, I think that is going to come from the generations that are coming.
The ones that is at the base of the pyramid.
That's right.
Because who happen to be the majority.
Yeah, because I work with the youth, and what I've seen is that the politics of issues is here with us. Because they are talking about education, they are talking about jobs, they are talking about health, they are talking about sanitation, everything. So they are, there are issues that they are talking about.
Okay.
And the politicians will have to address that, going forward. I don't think that buying votes and dividing people
will cure our problems.
Will cure our problems.
And I think that's a good place to leave it. Yes. I just want to thank you for finding time to come and speak to us. Thank you so much. You are masked all through this interview, and I know our viewers have watched that. That's an important protocol. Yeah. We must mask up. We must keep our social distance.
Okay.
But thank you nevertheless. And we wish you well in your sunset years. Thank you, Dr. for coming. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Willy Mutunga, for finding time to come through. We really appreciate. We wish you well in your sunset years, and thank you for giving us and sharing with us those insights. Well, that's all we had time for from the capital city of Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Mboya, and I'm wishing you a pleasant evening. Good night, and God bless.